Well, Jesus is a cult.
Yes.
Amen. Anything that's devotional, anything that's excellent, anything that's worthwhile in the world, they're all cult. Music, dancing, acting, sports, educational, high finance, politics. Okay, or there's religious cults like Mormonism, Hindu, Buddhism, Scientology. They're all cults. And so is Christian. Real Christianity is also a cult.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you have to decide which cult you're going to belong to.
That's right.
Everybody who is not a loser is in a cult.
Yes.
Okay. Only the losers they're not in cult.
It's been a while since Robert Shinn's name has been in the spotlight, but his story continues to unfold in dramatic ways. Shinn is a pastor who also presents himself as a businessman, talent manager, and owner of real estate and entertainment companies. He has been involved in managing TikTok dancers in the past, and his influence has stretched across different industries. Now, however, his attention is no longer on business alone. He is at the center of a serious federal investigation. Multiple agencies are involved, including the FBI, the U.S. Postal Service's Investigation Division, and the Department of Labor. Back in late July, authorities raided one of his properties in a high-profile operation. News of the raid made national headlines, particularly in Los Angeles. Soon after, it was confirmed that a grand jury had been convened. Shinn's lawyers themselves told a California court that members of his church, along with Shinn and some close associates, had been subpoenaed to testify. This meant that the case was moving into a deeper stage of investigation. Meanwhile, Shinn has been fighting several civil cases. He is suing former members and even bloggers, claiming they have conspired to damage his reputation and spread lies about him. At the same time, he is also being sued by ex-members of his church. Their claims are severe: human trafficking, sexual exploitation, forced labor, financial fraud, and wage violations, among many others. Dozens of accusations have been listed, and well-known former members featured in the Netflix documentary Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, are among the plaintiffs. To delay his California civil case, Shinn's attorneys asked for a stay. They argued that since there was an ongoing federal investigation, forcing their client to testify could put him in legal danger. They reminded the court that in America, people who are the focus of such probes have the right to remain silent. The judge agreed and paused the civil trial, noting that grand jury proceedings and federal search warrants are always sealed to protect privacy and avoid harming ongoing work. The next hearing was scheduled for December, but the stay could last months, or even years, depending on how long the federal investigation takes. Still, Shinn hasn't stopped his legal maneuvers. In Minnesota, he has sought a temporary injunction against a reporter, claiming that coverage of his situation is damaging and misrepresents his cases. He argues that reports about the federal raid, subpoenas, and ongoing investigations harm him unfairly. Yet court documents filed in California clearly state these facts. His critics see this as an attempt to silence free speech and public reporting. Adding to the dispute, some members connected to Shinn, like James and Miranda Derrick, have filed affidavits blaming media coverage for the backlash they face online. They say they felt forced to delete their social media because of criticism. However, questions remain about the validity of their filings, since they do not appear to include notarization or the standard penalty of perjury language. What is striking is that despite these sweeping claims, James Derrick himself has never been named as a target of the federal probe. This only highlights the complicated nature of the situation: multiple lawsuits in different states, federal authorities digging through evidence, and a swirl of accusations and counterclaims. What remains certain is that Robert Shinn is under the heaviest scrutiny of his life, with the weight of several government agencies watching his every move. James and Miranda Derrick have never been named as targets in this investigation. No court records or legal filings suggest that they are under suspicion. The only people identified by attorneys as subjects of the federal probe are Robert Shinn and several of his close associates from the church. The judge agreed and paused the civil trial, noting that grand jury proceedings and federal search warrants are always sealed to protect privacy and avoid harming ongoing work. The next hearing was scheduled for December, but the stay could last months, or even years, depending on how long the federal investigation takes. Still, Shinn hasn't stopped his legal maneuvers. In Minnesota, he has sought a temporary injunction against a reporter, claiming that coverage of his situation is damaging and misrepresents his cases. He argues that reports about the federal raid, subpoenas, and ongoing investigations harm him unfairly. Yet court documents filed in California clearly state these facts. His critics see this as an attempt to silence free speech and public reporting. Adding to the dispute, some members connected to Shinn, like James and Miranda Derrick, have filed affidavits blaming media coverage for the backlash they face online. They say they felt forced to delete their social media because of criticism. However, questions remain about the validity of their filings, since they do not appear to include notarization or the standard penalty of perjury language. What is striking is that despite these sweeping claims, James Derrick himself has never been named as a target of the federal probe. This only highlights the complicated nature of the situation: multiple lawsuits in different states, federal authorities digging through evidence, and a swirl of accusations and counterclaims. What remains certain is that Robert Shinn is under the heaviest scrutiny of his life, with the weight of several government agencies watching his every move. James and Miranda Derrick have never been named as targets in this investigation. No court records or legal filings suggest that they are under suspicion. The only people identified by attorneys as subjects of the federal probe are Robert Shinn and several of his close associates from the church. That information came directly from Robert's legal team in California. Even so, Miranda Derrick filed an affidavit in support of a motion for a temporary injunction. In her statement, she insisted that no charges had been brought against her. She explained that she deleted her social media accounts because of public backlash, which she blamed on increased criticism during the year. However, her name does not appear anywhere as a defendant in the lawsuits, and I have never accused either Miranda or James of committing crimes. Miranda has only been listed as a potential witness. Robert's lawyers also submitted documents of their own, confirming to a California court that a federal investigation was active. They acknowledged that moving forward with the civil trial could expose their clients to questions that might risk self-incrimination. The court agreed and granted a stay, pausing the civil case until the investigation runs its course. According to their filing, on July 25, 2025, federal agents carried out coordinated raids on several properties linked to Robert and his organization. Multiple search warrants were executed, and computers, phones, and other records were seized. National media, including Fox, ABC, and People, reported extensively on the raids. Robert has claimed I falsely accused him of being arrested. But what I reported came from public news outlets, such as Fox 11, which stated that he had been detained following the raid. He argues this is damaging, yet the coverage was widespread and based on official actions by law enforcement. His lawyers even submitted unredacted documents to the California court that listed 5 separate search warrants tied to his properties. These filings also mentioned that properties connected to Shinn's church, including headquarters and residences, were searched. Financial records, personal devices, and other sensitive material were taken by federal authorities. The attorneys argued that if members such as Christina Keller, Robert's tax preparer, were forced to testify in depositions, they could be placed in a position where their constitutional rights were at risk. This was one of the main reasons they pushed for the stay. What feels inconsistent is how the two cases are being presented. In California, Robert's team freely admits that federal raids happened and that media outlets across the country reported on them. Yet in Minnesota, where I am being sued, they shift the blame toward me, suggesting that my reporting is what forced people like Miranda and James to delete their online accounts. They call my coverage aggression, though the larger story has been heavily documented by national news and even a Netflix documentary. The truth is, I am not part of the federal investigation, nor have I filed criminal complaints against them. The FBI spoke to me last year, but that was about unrelated matters. Still, I find myself used as a convenient scapegoat in Minnesota while in California my reporting isn't even mentioned. This contradiction makes the entire situation confusing. I continue to be concerned for the individuals caught up in this group, including Miranda and James. But I'm also troubled by the legal filings that don't appear to meet basic standards. Some declarations lack notarization, or the standard penalty of perjury language that normally accompanies sworn statements. By contrast, Robert's own lawyers signed their California filings under penalty of perjury, which raises questions about why these other affidavits do not. In the end, the reality is clear: the federal investigation exists, multiple raids took place, and national coverage has made that public knowledge. Yet, instead of addressing those facts, I am being blamed in one courtroom while ignored in another. That contradiction speaks volumes about how this case is being handled and who is being used to deflect responsibility. Right now, I am staring at a legal document that clearly carries Robert's signature and the standard line that says it is signed under the penalty of perjury. That is what a proper affidavit looks like. In contrast, the declarations submitted by others do not have that. They are not signed under penalty of perjury, they don't show a real signature, and they haven't been notarized. What's on the page is nothing more than a typed name. This makes me question their legitimacy. Who actually signed these? Was it really them, or could anyone have typed the name in? I cannot say for certain, and that uncertainty makes me uneasy. The lack of formality makes the whole process feel like a game. Legal filings are supposed to carry weight, but when they aren't sworn or notarized, it is hard to take them seriously. That doubt only fuels my concern. Despite this, I stand by the fact that I have the right to share opinions. Free speech allows people to report on public matters, and everything I've said has come from documents, media coverage, or official statements. If Robert is eventually found guilty of the crimes being investigated, the sentence he faces could be life in prison. That isn't my speculation, it's the possible outcome under federal law. If that day comes, then yes, he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. That's a fact. My concern is not just about him, though. I keep thinking about the people around him, the members of his group, who might be caught in this situation. They may not understand what's unfolding, or they might be too close to see it clearly. I worry about them more than I worry about myself. Still, I refuse to be silenced. Trying to silence me only raises more questions. In fact, it makes me wonder if the investigation is moving toward its final stages. Federal grand jury proceedings can take years, but sometimes they conclude much faster. When legal teams start filing motions and trying to gag reporters, it can be a sign that major decisions are coming. Deals may be in the works, indictments might be close, or prosecutors could be preparing to take the next step. What I report is not fabricated. Subpoenas exist, and they have been confirmed. News stations like Fox 11 reported that people were detained during the raids, even if they were later released. Law enforcement acknowledged that the searches happened, and afterwards subpoenas for the grand jury were issued. Even Robert's own attorneys have admitted in court that there is a strong chance arrests could follow. So where exactly is the lie? What part of this is false? These aren't my inventions, they are facts that have been echoed by both federal filings and mainstream outlets. I continue to stand by my reporting. If you're following this story, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think attempts will be made to silence me? Can you believe how this is playing out? Share what you think in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button if you appreciate the updates, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future coverage. Make sure to like, Subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.